A Steinway grand piano costs $100,000, but you do not need to spend $100,000 to get started playing piano. In this buyer's guide, I'll make things very simple for you by telling you my exact favorite piano to buy for every budget from $100 up to $10,000. Let's start with a quick overview of the different kinds of pianos. Behind me, you see an upright piano, and that's an acoustic instrument. The grand piano I mentioned, a Steinway that you might see in concert halls, that's also an acoustic instrument. Then we have electric keyboards, and that encompasses a huge world of different kinds of instruments, including organs, synthesizers, vintage electric pianos. We're going to focus on the keyboards that emulate the sound of an acoustic piano. That breaks into two categories: digital pianos and MIDI controllers. The difference is a MIDI controller only makes sound if you connect it to your computer, whereas a digital piano is typically aimed at beginners. It will often have 88 weighted keys. That means the keys give resistance, just like an acoustic instrument. And there are often speakers built into the keyboard. At this point, before we get into these different budget tiers, I can give you a simple decision tree to decide which category you're looking in. If you know you want to be able to practice with headphones and not bother the other people in your household, you need a keyboard of some kind. And if you know you want to be able to turn your instrument on and play without having to use your laptop, then you're looking at a digital piano and not a MIDI controller. So now let's get into my specific recommendations. By the way, if you want this video summarized into a simple printable buyer's guide, you can get that for free at my website. We'll leave a link. It's worth mentioning, I'm not sponsored by any of the brands I'm recommending here, so I'm unbiased in that way. My only commercial interest in making this video is I want you to buy an instrument you love and then come learn piano from me. You can become a member at pianofluency.com, and I'll help you learn. Now, let's talk about how much piano you can buy with $100. At this price point, you've got to look at MIDI controllers. My recommendation is something like the M-Audio KeyStation 49. This is very simple. You have fewer keys than an official 88-key acoustic piano. They're unweighted keys, so they don't give you much resistance. And there are no bells and whistles. But it works. For $100, you can have a working 49-key keyboard that will connect to your computer, and you can start making music. And I had one of these in college. I bought one as a freshman because I needed something that I could put on my desk in my dorm room to make music on my computer when I wasn't going to the practice rooms. And it was great. It works very well. If you are interested in producing music, this might be all that you ever need. If we step up in price to $250, I'm still going to recommend a MIDI keyboard. It'll just be a better MIDI keyboard. My favorite maker of MIDI keyboards in general is Arturia, and they sell one at $250. This is the Keylab Essential 49. With the extra money, you're basically getting more buttons, more sliders, something a little more robust, and that is very useful if you're a music producer. And really, at this price point, these MIDI controllers, that's who this is for. As a student who's serious about learning to play the piano well, these MIDI controllers are pretty limited. Ideally, you want weighted keys, you want 88 keys, and it's really nice to have something where you don't have to get it going with GarageBand or Ableton in order to hear a sound. It's nice to just sit down, turn it on, and start practicing. The good news is once you get to $500, you have access to the base model, the starting cheapest model, for all of the major keyboard brands. My personal favorite by far is Roland, and you can get a Roland FP10 for $500, which in my view is a steal. I love Roland. I think that their digital pianos are by far the best in terms of the action, the feeling of the piano, and the piano sound that they have. So if you're at a loss for what model to buy, that's what I recommend. Your overall cost will end up being somewhere between $700, $750 if you're buying new, because you need to get all of the accessories. You will need good headphones, you need a bench, a stand, you definitely need a sustain pedal. So if you need to keep your overall budget beneath $500, you still might have luck on the used market. Depending on where you live, these go up for sale pretty frequently on a place like Craigslist, Nextdoor, Facebook Marketplace. If you can't find that Roland model, or there's an even better deal available, like your neighbor next door is trying to get rid of their 88-key weighted Casio, go for it. There's not a huge difference between these different digital pianos. And the other piece of good news is that there's not a big difference as you go from this price point up to a $5,000 keyboard. What you get as you spend more money on keyboards is new features. There's certainly digital pianos aimed at students that just have nicer speakers built into the keyboard. And then most of the extra features you get as you move into these more expensive keyboards really have to do with sounds. As keyboard players, we can play so many different sounds. And it's a fun privilege of playing the piano that you can explore all of these other sounds, electric piano sounds, synth sounds, and so on. My recommendation, though, is to start by doing that using MIDI. Once you get interested in these other sounds and you're willing to deal with the kind of technical learning curve, you should start by using free or cheap tools that are available to everybody if you can get a keyboard connected up to a laptop. And you can even do that with something like a Roland FP10. Really, any modern keyboard will have MIDI compatibility. And I just recommend that as a better place to start if you're at all constrained by cost, because it doesn't cost any extra money. You can use a keyboard that you already have, and you can start exploring. You might think that there's something special about the sounds that come on a Nord stage. In my opinion, you can really accomplish anything that you want to as a keyboard sound designer using a laptop. The difference that you get with one of these professional gigging keyboards is the convenience, the portability. It's kind of a drag to bring your laptop with you to a gig. So once you get to where you are actually playing in rehearsals or performing with a band and you need other keyboard sounds, I would recommend looking at the brands Nord and Korg. Nord makes the Nord Electro, which is very portable, and the Nord Stage, which is kind of the industry standard performance keyboard. Korg has the SV1, which is a fun vintage electric piano model, and then they have the Korg Kronos, which was my favorite gig keyboard when I was playing lots of wedding gigs. These are all really professional level keyboards, and they're typically going to cost between $2,000 and $5,000. For the sake of this video, they're not making it onto my tier list because I'm giving good recommendations for how, as a beginner pianist, you can get access to a good way to practice piano. In my opinion, if you're going to spend more than $1,000, you should look for an acoustic instrument. Acoustic pianos come with all sorts of expenses and hassles that you can avoid if you stick with digital pianos forever, but there is an experience to playing an acoustic instrument that you simply cannot replicate with a digital instrument. The tricky thing is if your budget is under around $3,000 or $4,000, it's going to be hard to find a good instrument in a piano store. But you can buy a good instrument from a private seller. If you're a beginner, it's just a bit more challenging. So I want to give you some advice on how to buy a great acoustic piano on the private seller market. We're talking Craigslist, Nextdoor, Facebook Marketplace. This was the exact position I was in when I was buying my piano. This behind me is a Yamaha P202 that I bought in 2015 from a woman who her husband was a commercial music composer here in LA. He owned this piano for a long time, took great care of it, and she was selling it for $700. I ended up putting $700 of work into it with a piano repair person. My all-in costs ended up being something like $1,600, including the move and the piano repair. $1,600 for this piano is an absolute steal. I love this instrument. I've been playing it for years. I recorded it for Leve. I recorded it for movie scores. And I've helped several friends through this same process of trying to find a good used upright without needing to pay $3,000 or $4,000. So here are the steps. Number one, go to a local piano store. Maybe I'm wrong. They might be offering something great for less than that $3,000 or $4,000 threshold. And at the very least, even if you're a beginner, you can just plunk around notes and get a sense for what a great instrument looks and sounds like. I will tell you, I am heavily biased towards Yamaha uprights. I think it's partly because I grew up playing a Yamaha that has stayed in my family for a really long time. But a lot of my other professional musician friends love Yamahas when it comes to upright pianos. So go to your local piano store, and the real reason you're there is you want to ask them for a referral to a great piano tuner and technician. That's because as you start looking around on Craigslist, and you can just search for Yamahas, look for something that's been kept in good condition, and really anything less than $2,000 is a steal. But before you buy it from this private seller, have your piano technician come and give it an appraisal. And that's a safeguard against the one thing you don't want to do, which is to buy a used acoustic instrument, and then the first time you get it tuned, find out that there's damage to the instrument that makes it very difficult to keep in tune without putting a lot of work into it. So you need to budget these things in. If you're buying an acoustic instrument, even if you find something that someone's giving away for free, and you'd be surprised how often that happens with pretty good instruments. People are moving, they don't want to have to move the piano, they haven't been playing it. You can get really lucky, but you should still budget at least $500 to $1,000 as the expense of owning this instrument, because you're going to want to get it appraised. You should pay for real piano movers. You might need to do that again if you move within the next few years. And you should be getting it tuned at least once a year, preferably every 6 months. So owning a great acoustic instrument for less than $3,000 is possible. As you can tell, this is the option with the most friction. You're going to have to put a lot of work into it. You might need to be patient with the process. If you do have the budget for it, buying an acoustic upright piano from a local piano store is a way to save yourself all of that headache. They will already have vetted this instrument. They may have put work into it to make sure it's in great shape. And if it's a reputable store, they'll be pricing it fairly for the value of the instrument. It's a good thing to know about upright pianos. They hold their value pretty well. They're not quite like a violin, where a violin can be 300 years old and more valuable than a new instrument. With pianos, they do depreciate a bit over time, but if you keep them in good shape, they will hold their value for decades. So it's a good investment, and it's something that will bring you so much joy. Having an acoustic upright piano in your home just gives life to the home. So this is our final tier. If you have between $3,000 and $10,000 to spend, you can get a really nice upright piano from a local store. In fact, if you want a brand new Yamaha U3 upright, the price is even a bit higher than that. They can go up to like 15 grand. I stopped my tier list at 10 grand because, in my view, if you're a beginner learning to play the instrument, it doesn't necessarily make sense to invest more than that right away before you know how it's going to fit into your life. But if you truly have a unlimited budget, and you just want a beautiful piece of furniture for your living room, go ahead and get a grand piano. You're going to want to go to a very reputable local seller, and they'll help you find the right thing. My personal favorite grand piano that I've ever played was a Fazioli, and those can go for 200 grand. For most of you, if you're a beginner and you want something straightforward to get started playing, that Roland FP10 is probably a good bet. And keep in mind that many piano students eventually end up with lots of different instruments. You might want to have a digital piano, some sort of small, lightweight, convenient MIDI controller, and then eventually you may want to have an acoustic instrument, even if you don't start with one. A final note to end on: don't get stuck on this step. If you know you want to buy a piano, get a piano. Any instrument is better than no instrument. And the most important thing is that you love it. If you see a cool, weird synth for $100 at a local instrument store and it just lights you up, maybe that's your axe. Maybe that's what you should buy and fall in love with it and start learning about music via that instrument. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think are the best pianos at these price points? I'm sure I missed something, so you can let me know in the comments. And then subscribe if you want to stick around to learn more about how to play your new instrument. My name is Ted with Piano Fluency.